So, yeah, I can already say good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody in the room, quite a full room. I'm happy about that, of course. And then also all the people that I see already online. So thanks a lot for being there to speak about the true cost of animal disease, animal welfare, public health, and sustainability in the EU. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this event, Animal Advocacy, Food Transition, as well as the Vets Federation, Federation of Veterinarians Europe, and also my co-host who cannot be there already, but he's going to come, Paulo de Nascimento Cabral, who will join us later. And then I hope you like the food. That's sponsored by me, by my office, and it's all vegan. I hope you like it. And as some of you might know, animal welfare is absolutely one of my core priorities of my work here in this house. So when the idea came up to organize an event on animal diseases and to combine it with animal welfare, I found that a very good idea. When we speak about animal disease outbreaks in Europe, we often speak as if they were natural disasters, unfortunate events that arrive unexpectedly and leave us with no choice but to react. But to be honest, I think we all know that the truth is different. Many of these outbreaks are not accidents of nature. They are the predictable consequence of a food production system that concentrates large numbers of animals in confined spaces, prioritizes also maximum output, and then relies on emergency measures when the risk materializes. So since October 2020, more than 120 million birds have been killed or culled across Europe because of highly pathogenic avian influenza. So during 2021 and 2022, only this season alone, around 50 million birds were affected across 37 European countries. So this year, a single sheeppox outbreak in Greece led to the culling of hundreds of thousands of sheep and goats. These numbers are staggering, but they are not exceptional. We know that. They reveal a system that repeatedly creates the conditions for disease transmission. So, as I said already, high stocking densities, genetic uniformity, chronic stress, weakened immune systems, and constant movement of animals between farms and production sites. So, and when this disease spreads, the response is the same, mass culling. We present depopulation as a technical necessity. Yet we rarely speak honestly about what it really means for the animals that are involved. So methods used during emergency outbreaks can involve prolonged suffering. For example, when we do a ventilation shutdown plus, for example, this involves sealing animal housing, stopping ventilation, and increasing heat until animals die from hypothermia and suffocation. So scientific studies have shown that birds can take hours to die under these conditions. Thousands of veterinary professions have called for this practice to be recognized for what it is. So it is a serious animal welfare concern. Other methods that we also know, including water-based foam and high concentration carbon dioxide, also raise significant welfare concerns. Yet during disease outbreaks, protections that normally apply under animal welfare legislation are often weakened in the name of speed, urgency, and efficiency. We must ask ourselves a difficult question. How can animals be protected by European law on one day and lose then their protections the moment an outbreak is declared? But the consequences do not stop with the animals. Farmers and veterinarians also bear the burden of this system. Studies have documented severe psychological impacts following culling operations, including depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress also for the people involved. We are asking people to destroy healthy animals they have raised and cared for, often repeatedly, while offering little assurance that the next outbreak will not happen again. And there is another consequence we cannot ignore: antimicrobial resistance. When animals are kept in conditions that facilitate disease transmission, antibiotics become like a substitute for prevention. So high stocking densities, intensive breeding for productivity, and chronic stress are all increase disease pressure and create incentive for antimicrobial use. Europe has taken important steps to restrict routine antibiotic use, but regulation alone is not enough if the underlying production model continues to generate disease risk. If we are serious about tackling antimicrobial resistance, we must also be serious about improving the conditions that make animals sick in the first place. This is why Europe needs a prevention agenda. I will finish on a few points. First, animal protection must apply fully during disease outbreaks. Emergency situation cannot become a legal gray zone. Second, where safe and effective vaccine exists, vaccination should become the default response rather than the last resort. Third, the upcoming livestock strategy must address root causes of disease transmission by reducing also stocking densities, improving housing conditions, and ensuring animals can express natural behaviors that support their health and their resilience. Fourth, we must redirect public support towards farming system that reduce disease pressure structurally. So extensive systems, mixed farming models, and agroecological approaches that strengthen resilience rather than dependence on emergency interventions. And finally, we must support farmers through this transition with dedicated funding, advisory services, diversification opportunities, and recognition that farmer mental health is also a policy issue. So the choice before us is simple. We can continue managing crisis after crisis, culling millions of animals, placing enormous burdens on the farmers, and treating the symptoms of a system that remains unchanged. Or we can choose prevention, a food system that is better for animals, better for farmers, and better for public health. Thank you. Now, I've heard that there is another, but I hope I will not mistreat the name. Sorry for that. Maybe I'll just say Sakis, another MEP from S&D is also here. No, Sakis, Arna.
It doesn't matter. I mean, even the Greeks cannot pronounce it correctly. Thank you so much. It got me very.
Okay, but I give you the floor maybe to say also.
First of all, I would like to thank you for having me here. On the other hand, I have to also share what I've experienced in Greece lately from a lady. She's a farmer, Mary Maru. You talked about let's say, the consequences of mental health and stuff, problems that the farmers started having. And she said that among the other farmers, they started taking tranquilizers after she saw all her animals dying and buried in front of her farm, and she cannot sleep still. For Greece, this is not just another policy discussion. It is the story of what thousands of livestock farmers have lived through over the past 2 years. According to the latest official data from the Greek Ministry of Rural Development and Food, more than 2,000 outbreaks of sheep and goat pox forced the culling of almost 500,000 sheep and goats. For us, therefore, today's discussions on the true cost of animal diseases is not theoretical. It's very painful reality. Sheep and goat pox pushed thousands of livestock farmers into despair. Flocks built with years of hard work, often passed down from one generation to the next, disappeared within just a few days. Behind every culled animal, there is much more than an economic loss. There is a family losing its income, a rural community becoming weaker, and local production chain being disrupted. This experience leads us to one clear conclusion. Prevention, as already mentioned, is not a cost, it is an investment. Europe has already taken important steps, but our recent experience shows that prevention on the ground must now become our highest priority. We cannot continue dealing with animal diseases only after a crisis has already erupted. Mass culling should never become the standard response. It must remain the very last resort when every other scientifically justified option has failed. Our objective should be clear: to minimize the need for mass culling while protecting animal health, public health, food safety, and the long-term sustainability of European livestock farming. To achieve this, of course, we need stronger veterinary services with permanent staff, rapid diagnosis, well-equipped laboratories, effective traceability systems, and immediate filed response. We need stricter biosecurity on farms, during transport, in slaughterhouses, throughout feed supply chains, and at animal gathering points. We also need continuous training and support for livestock farmers, not only during outbreaks, but every single day. At the same time, Europe should continue an open and science-based discussion on preventive tools, including vaccination whenever it is safe, scientifically justified, and compatible with the protection of the single market and international trade. Producers should never be left trapped between the fear of disease and the fear of losing access to markets. The European Union must provide clear rules, common protocols, and real support. The Greek experience has also shown us something equally important. When compensation is delayed, as it has been, or does not reflect the real damage, veterinary crisis quickly becomes a social and economic crisis. Support must therefore be rapid, fair, and adequate, not only for the animals that were lost, but also for lost income, the rebuilding of flocks, and the survival of family farms. If we truly want sustainable livestock farming in Europe, we must first protect the people who keep it, of course, alive. And if we truly believe in animal welfare, we must invest before disaster strikes, not only afterwards. The true cost of animal diseases is not measured only in euros. It is measured in lost animals, lost farms, lost confidence, and a lost future for many rural communities. So let today's message be simple and clear. Less reaction, more prevention; less emergency, more preparedness; less mass culling, more science, biosecurity, and early action. This is the real lesson from Greece. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your important words that really go into the same direction also, and for your testimony also on what's happening in Greece. So I will give, without losing any time, because I see already we are over time, give the word to the floor to the Irish presidency on priorities in animal health. So to Rob Doyle, he's Assistant Secretary General, Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. So you have the floor.
So Trinona mai, an Aishri Orica, the Parliament of Europa, a Cod Lakaha, Agus Anina. Good afternoon, distinguished members of the European Parliament, colleagues and guests. Yeah. Yeah. So Gareb Maha Ignahegrahe as Midavalue Lekela on Diasporia Toblakta Shamada the last and Viha. So thank you to the organisers for bringing us together for this important discussion on animal health. And I'm honoured to contribute to this occasion, especially as today Ireland assumes the presidency of the Council of the European Union. I think it's a timely discussion because animal health sits at the centre of so many of the European Union's shared priorities. Animal health is closely linked to animal welfare, public health, food safety, resilient food systems, farmer well-being and public trust. So we are now in a time when the European Union is asked to become more secure, more competitive and more resilient. An Irish presidency is guided by the Irish phrase, Ní neart gur cur le céile, which is the meaning of strength with unity and emphasises the message that we are strongest when we work together. The Irish presidency will be framed around 3 pillars, so those of values, competitiveness and security. And animal health sits naturally across these 3 pillars, reflecting our values by supporting animal welfare, food safety, science-based regulation and consumer confidence. Supporting competitiveness by protecting farm incomes, supply chains, trade and the functioning of the single market, and strengthening our security by improving Europe's preparedness for biological threats, zoonotic risks, antimicrobial resistance, climate-related disease pressures and disruption to food systems. With the presidency, Ireland's role will be to chair council work, support continuity, facilitate constructive discussion, and help member states identify practical ways forward where there is basis for agreement. And in animal health, this means supporting work on prevention of animal disease, including surveillance, biosecurity, risk communication, and cooperation across the One Health agenda. Ireland will approach this role in a balanced, evidence-based and delivery-focused way, helping to advance discussion while maintaining high standards for animal health and welfare, on which the resilience of the EU agri-food system depends. So I think we can all see that Europe's animal health landscape is changing. We have emerging and re-emerging diseases, climate change, changing interactions between animals, people, and ecosystems. And these, along with the realities of trade, combine to create a complex challenge. For the Irish presidency, this means keeping prevention and preparedness at the centre of the animal health agenda. So Ireland will support and facilitate the discussion on science-based and proportionate tools available, including vaccination, where justified as part of a wider prevention, control or response framework. And we all know that prevention of animal disease is really important. And as our colleague has highlighted, disease outbreaks create negative consequences for animal welfare, stress for farmers and local communities, and increased workloads for veterinary teams. And in Ireland, we're conscious of this, and concrete initiatives such as the Targeted Advisory Service on Animal Health, which we call TASES, are national programmes to help farmers, veterinary practitioners and the industry to manage risks before they become more serious. So these TASES provide support to the sector on biosecurity, pig and poultry health, pig welfare, tuberculosis and parasite control, and they are delivered through Animal Health Ireland, which is a public-private partnership. The other thing we believe is that clear risk communication around animal health is also essential. And to achieve that goal, Ireland's second national farmed animal biosecurity strategy is built around the effective, simple message, the ABC of biosecurity. This is A for awareness, B is for behavioural change, and C is for consistency of application. Ireland's prevention priority is grounded in partnership with trusted practical advice that respects farmers' experiences and supports change that can be applied and maintained on farms. And again, as highlighted, the benefits of animal disease prevention go beyond disease control. Healthier animals use resources more efficiently, have fewer losses and better animal welfare. Robust disease prevention can also reduce the need for treatment, helping to reduce antimicrobial resistance and protect public health. And in this sense, preventative animal health is also part of sustainable, resilient food production. So as discussions continue on the Common Agricultural Policy and the next multi-annual financial framework, Ireland's presidency role will be to support constructive engagement on a framework that remains workable for farmers and administrations, while recognising the role that EU funding can play in supporting animal health and welfare and environmental improvement, delivering better One Health outcomes for all. Ireland believes that research and innovation have important roles to play, along with the responsible use of artificial intelligence and technology, supporting diagnostics, vaccine development and surveillance tools, and maintaining this connection between research, policy and practice strengthens prevention and preparedness in animal health on the ground. The current discussion on the proposed animal welfare during transport regulation at Council Expert Working Party levy is a key priority for Ireland. The presidency will support constructive evidence-based discussion, and we are confident of working together with member states to make progress on this file, which is of the utmost importance to animal welfare. Ireland's role as president and chair of this working party will be to facilitate balanced discussion among member states, recognising both citizens' expectations and the practical realities faced by farmers, transporters, operators and competent authorities. The objective must be progress that is science-based, enforceable, proportionate and workable. Ireland will also facilitate exchange and coordination at international level. During Ireland's presidency, there will be continued engagement with WOA, and Ireland will also lead on advancing the EU position in the work of WOA's Governance Review Committee, and Ireland will further support international standard setting work through its chairing role in Codex work on food import and export inspection and certification systems. So to conclude, for the Irish presidency, the momentum behind One Health, One Welfare must be maintained and remain connected to practical action that strengthens prevention, supports animal welfare, protects public health, and further contributes to resilient and sustainable food system. So tugan an disporiachta new deis chun na snáhanna sin na haring le céile agus táimid tnú leis an agsúlach déirte se siomra in new at Today's discussion gives us an opportunity to bring these threads together, and I look forward to hearing the different views in the room today. Gurv Mahagat, so thank you, and I give the floor back to our chair.
So everything you said in Irish, was that said afterwards in English?
Yes.
Yeah, we never know. I must say, you could have said it and then, yeah.
I could have said anything.
Yes, we really don't understand. But very interesting. Thank you very much for your input and good to know already a little bit what are the main ambitions with the Irish presidency. I hand over then to Jonathan Rushton, is that right? And then a professor of economics of animal health, University of Edinburgh, and he is going to make a keynote. What does the data tell us about the direct and indirect cause of animal diseases? And then afterwards, afterwards, Olga will also, Kiku will maybe go more into the detail of the presentation and will also moderate then the roundtable that we will have. Olga, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I'll just say a few words about Mr. Rushton. And before that, I would just like to say a big thank you to our MEPs, Tilly Metz and Mr. Cabral for actually co-hosting this event today. I would also like to thank the Irish presidency for being here on this important day, on the beginning of its own presidency, to speak about the issue. The European Commission, which is present via the representative, and of course all our speakers. I would also like to say a big thanks to our co-organizers for this event, the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, with whom we actually worked for quite a while to actually make sure that this is a successful event. Before starting, I just also want to say a few words about how animals are at the center of this discussion today, this issue. And across Europe, as we heard before, hundreds of thousands of animals are killed every year in response to disease outbreaks after many have spent their lives in conditions where disease can spread very easily. So behind every statistic that we'll hear today, and we hear usually on the news all the time, are sentient beings that experience illness, or in many cases not, because animals are killed perhaps in some cases without actually being sick themselves. They experience stress, and ultimately they experience the culling process itself. So it would be good to keep this in mind during the conversations today. I will now say a few words for Professor Rushton. He's an agricultural economist who specializes in the economics of animal health and food systems. Over the last 35 years, he has lived and worked in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. I guess almost everywhere. His principal research interests are global burden of animal diseases, where he directs a global program co-led in phase 2 with WOA, the former OIE. He embraces One Health approaches in the search of solutions to society's health problems. He was a non-executive member of the Animal Health and Welfare Board for England, DEFRA. He actually joined the University of Liverpool in October of 2016. In 2020, he became a senior IIAD fellow in epidemiology at Texas A&M University. Just over a year ago, he joined the Roslin Institute at the University of Edinburgh as professor of economics of animal health. Finally, he is based 75% of his time in Australia, and we're glad to have him here today.
So, yeah. Thank you. I won't say any more about myself. That's too long. I've been asked to talk today a bit about the direct and indirect costs of animal diseases, and I won't go into definitions because I think they're confusing. I want to go into some of the data. And I want to remind ourselves about the fact that if we're going to be serious about what we just heard in those opening passages, we need to invest in data, and data investment is money never wasted. Get my machine to work, that will be good. I want to remind ourselves that animals are fundamental across all societies across the world. They act as a store of investment, store of wealth. They provide pleasure and company. In many places, they still provide a source of transport, but fundamentally, most of the animals we keep feed and clothe everybody. How is that organized? It's organized in quite complex food systems where we have overseas production coming into our food systems in Europe. But this is an upside down triangle. And we have lots of contributions to make from the animal health perspective in terms of how we manage disease, how we dictate things. But what are the numbers behind this? Well, only about 2% of our population across Europe actually working in agriculture, but they affect the welfare of people across the European Union and across the UK. 450 people are affected by this. Agriculture manages about half the land area. And the food sector itself is our biggest manufacturing industry. It's a really important part of any developed economy. Turnover in Europe is estimated to be about 1.2 trillion euros, with about 250 billion euros added value. Most of that activity is not at farm level. It's in the food processing industries and in the retailing sector. And that's something we have to sort of understand. But the responsibility for the veterinary services is at that apex, the bottom part of this triangle. If we get something wrong in that part, then we affect everybody across the community. And that includes vegans as well as people who eat livestock products. My country had a scare with BSE, which we paid heavily for, and it led to the creation of EFSA. So we've had responses across Europe in terms of how we manage this process. But I think we have to listen to your comments today. We have to get more serious again in terms of how we manage disease overall. So why do we need stories about animal diseases? Well, from a governmental perspective, every time we legislate a disease, we have to think about the fact that the state becomes the underwriter in terms of controlling and managing that pathogen. And as we've heard as well, many of our reactions are about quite desperate means to actually get rid of the host, not just the pathogen, and that's a really problematic issue. So when we start thinking about the burden of animal diseases, what's our sort of focal point? Well, we've drawn on the wealth of experience in human health where they've got a disability adjusted life year. This is an adopted metric that's widely used across human health. And they can paint many pretty pictures. So they can actually look longitudinally in terms of the changes and improvements of health. This is for Belgium, where we can see that disability adjusted life years have been reducing year on year over long periods of time. We can also look at the EU initiatives to actually measure what we're spending on human health, and we can plot this and sort of do estimations of what that means in terms of our investment on humans, in terms of their health and their outcomes. So where are we with animal health? Well, we know that we have impact of diseases caused by the diseases themselves. So animals die because of diseases, their fertility is affected, their growth rate's affected, their efficiency to produce food is affected. And every time we reduce that efficiency, we have an impact across other food parts of the food system. As we heard, we don't stop and let diseases multiply in our host species. We actually respond to them. We can do that through medicines and vaccines, but we can also do that through culling mechanisms. And every time we spend 100 euros in terms of our reaction, we're trying to aim to reduce the impact of diseases overall. From a purely economic perspective, that means we've got a balance between those 2 points, and it could be about managing disease rather than trying to eradicate disease. And that's a tricky thing to balance to sort of set. And how do we put prices on these things? Well, we generally speaking rely on markets. And if we look at the value of food overall, we're paying very little for our food, and therefore we're actually devaluing the animals we keep in these intensive systems. So we have to be careful about how we're doing that process. So the program I lead, the Global Burden of Animal Disease, has been trying to provide some clarity about what we do with the burden of disease. We want to understand about the livestock populations at risk, their biomass, their value, their outputs. We've done a gap analysis to actually try and measure the difference between a current state and an ideal state of health to understand what we're losing and what we're spending. And we've been attributing that by cause to understand absolute burdens and relative burdens. This piece of work is very much around productivity reductions. It captures some welfare issues, but it's still something that is ongoing in terms of actually understanding how much welfare and how much health is in that process. But we mustn't forget that the agricultural system itself and the livestock we keep in it is part of a very complex food system that moves products backwards and forwards and moves money. Every time we place an animal disease in this, we actually have a ripple effect across those food systems, and we impact the feed inputs. One of our big challenges in economics is how do we measure these impacts? And we're using sector models, partial equilibrium models, and wider economy models to look at trade issues. So we can add to that farm level productivity shift some information about societal and economic burden of those animal diseases. And I'm going to draw, fortunately I'm sitting next to Rob, I'm going to draw on the work we've been doing with Ireland in this regard, because Ireland is one of the, somebody seems to have switched on. Have I switched on my? Have I switched on the? No, I haven't switched on the screen. Try again. Yeah, that's working. Yeah. So the work we've been doing with Ireland has been done on purpose. Ireland have got a very good database of entry-exit data for cattle. We've had a PhD student working through this. He's actually shown quite carefully that there's been a big increase in our investment in cattle and also a shift from beef into dairy. This kind of information is critical in terms of setting animal health policies and understanding risk issues. The PhD student, Emma Jane Murray, has also been looking at the shifts of productivity over time. And there's also, alongside that, we've been doing some work in Scotland and England, where we can see there's actually been an improvement in terms of productivity issues and health issues. And I display this because this is a good news story rather than a bad news story. So when we start thinking about this from a health perspective, it's important we go back to data. Our case studies across the world allow us to compare different extensive systems. And we've been working in Africa, parts of Asia, where we can compare cattle, goat and sheep systems by using biomass as a denominator. And you can see quite a range of different outcomes from this. And we've also been looking at intensive systems in Europe, Africa, and Asia, where we can look more carefully at output and the loss we are experiencing. You can see that some of our systems are not very good and produce quite variable outputs. Emma Jane has also worked very carefully to actually look at the successful story of BVD control in the Republic of Ireland. And you can see that there's been a dramatic reduction in the impact of BVD, with a subsequent improvement in terms of animal welfare outcomes with regards mortality reduction and impact on growth rates. And with regards our important exotic diseases, Peste petite ruminante, which has risen its head in Europe again after a very long time of absence, we can place that into a context of general health. So it's important when we start targeting our big diseases, we understand what the general health situation is. Rob mentioned about the importance of farm visits, which talk about general health rather than specific health. And I think that's a really important key to getting better outcomes. Now, putting all that farm level information back into economy models allows us to say something quite careful about GDP shifts. These are data from Ethiopia, a country very dependent on livestock production, where removing health constraints probably would increase GDP by about 3%. So that's obviously a big number. But when we look at it in terms of who gains the impact from an improvement of animal health, it's not farm level. Every time we improve animal health, we improve the efficiency of the food system, and therefore we improve the profitability of our food businesses. And we also improve the consumer welfare. And some of that impact is not just about people eating livestock, it's also about the efficiency of using other inputs that then are made more available to people who don't eat livestock. What can we say about outbreaks? Well, our Australian and New Zealand and US colleagues have been busy doing outbreak assessments before they occur to actually understand what the impact will be. They do this on purpose because they want to have investment in the animal health systems, and they're really good examples from New Zealand, Australia, and the US in this regard. We also have lots of guesstimations, which I would say are not particularly useful. They create big numbers, they create big headlines, they get attention, but it's attention that's not very good in terms of thinking about targeting resources. So you'll find information that one of the outbreaks of AI in France was €1 billion. The recent case of FMD in Germany was €1 billion. And the re-emergence of New World Screwworm in the US is supposed to be 10.8 billion. They create good headlines, but we can't drill down into them to actually understand what we need to do next. So I'd recommend that we start to think more carefully about how we do assessments of outbreaks using real data. We have some examples of this with an OECD study that was done over 10 years ago. And a Japanese colleague, had some really good data in terms of the impact of BSE on the import market and the reduction of exports from the US and transferring it to Australia. So I want to try and summarize what I've tried to say in this. Animal diseases reduce farm level productivity, and they have an impact on animal welfare. Farm business operator profits are also reduced, but also consumer welfare is reduced by the presence of poor animal health status. Animal diseases also impact animal welfare and the environment. How we measure that and how we calculate that is still ongoing and still needs more input to actually make that a better case. But good animal health, populations free of diseases, are a societal asset and they generate societal goods. But we're struggling with some data. We don't have good quality population data in many parts of the world. And it's okay as having good data in Europe, but we're being constantly exposed by populations around us. So we need to actually up our game in terms of the quality of data that we've got in different places that we're connected to. So how do we tell the stories better in a more convincing way? We're working very closely with data scientists, and they keep telling me we need to collect things systematically with frequency. We need to curate those data, store them, make them accessible, make them interoperable, so we can actually bring them together to make sense of them. Our analysis needs to be systematic, and we need to do that on a regular time period. So we're actually showing whether things are getting better or getting worse or staying constant. And we need to communicate that carefully in credible journals, regular reports, dashboards, and news reports. Our message from the Global Burden of Animal Disease team is, please keep investing in livestock and animal health data. Let's be systematic and let's have agreed principles with how we're doing data collection, collation, curation. And let's do needs-driven data analysis to improve our animal disease management. How do we achieve this? Well, I kind of beg you, because I work in economics, our surveillance system needs to have socioeconomics in it. We need to be thinking about how the food system's operating. By all means, let's keep collecting the pathogens, doing the vaccines, the diagnostics, but we need to associate that with analysis of the data, thinking about animal movement, intensity of livestock keeping, so we can direct our animal disease searches, and we can have systems where we're looking at rational and proportionate disease control measures based on real data. GBADS, for me, sits in the heart of this. The burden of animal disease, if we don't know it, we have no baseline, and therefore we can't do economic analysis very sensibly. So we need investment in livestock and animal health data. It pays to be informed, and then we can have better discussions, more informed discussions about which direction we help the livestock sector move in. Our technical guide is available if anybody wants to have a look at it. And I want to thank the funders and collaborators, but also to Nancy at FVE for inviting me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As don't want to run out of time, so we're moving to our next speaker, who is Yannis Paradas. He was born in Thessaloniki, Greece. He began his professional career in 1984 at Agro Impacts Limited. The company specialized in importing live cattle and sheep from the Czech Republic, Serbia, Romania, Hungary, Poland, and Bulgaria. He later became a shareholder at Intexim Limited before establishing his own cattle breeding and fattening farm in Langadas, Thessaloniki. He served as vice president of the Thrace Thessaly Macedonia Association of Meat and Livestock Traders. And in recent years, he has focused exclusively on cattle fattening while remaining actively involved in the livestock sector.
Thank you very much that I'm here with you. And I want to tell you that when I come in this business, that I hear it goes, the blue tank goes only in Australia. After today, it's everywhere. And I want to tell you about stories about BVD, that I go 20 years behind. Before that, we start to buy 2 trucks live animals from Ireland to Greece. The animals arrived good, but after 15 days, we lose all these animals. So even from Holland years ago, we have a big problem with the livestock because of BVD. And today that we don't discuss about this because we vaccinate these animals, all these animals. There is, and last year we import from Ireland about 42,000 live cattle. That is far away for Greece, the transport. And I think that we have zero dead animals on this transportation. And today, that especially now that we are here, there is a presentation in Hungary for a new trailer for transport big cattle like pregnant heifers, and this is the first truck that will be cooling totally. So in this case, that they have big temperatures that we can travel without problems the livestock, and they have programmed that to continue on this production of these trucks. This is, I have to tell you my stories. I choose also BVD for the stories. I can tell you a lot of stories of even we, especially Greece, pass a lot of disease because we are near to Turkey and we have big problem because several times we have in our borders they start the problems like foot and mouth disease that also already exist now in one island near to very close to Turkey. So the only solution is vaccination, and we forgot the serious problems. This I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. And we move on to our next speaker, Julien Letoile, who is a mixed veterinary practitioner based in France with a strong focus in dairy and beef cattle medicine. He has been practicing in a rural veterinary clinic since 2006. He's vice president of the French Union of Private Veterinary Practitioners and vice president of the Union of European Veterinary Practitioners. He's strongly involved in animal health and animal welfare issues at both French and European level. His contribution will address all dimensions of a lumpy skin disease outbreak, its impact on animals, farmers, veterinarians, economics, and wider society.
So in France, the hardest part of lumpy skin disease, LSD, outbreak was not only stopping the disease. It was asking people to accept decisions that no one wants to take. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share the French experience with LSD. France contains the disease, but containment came at a cost. For animals, farmers, veterinarians, authorities, and public trust. LSD is a category A disease. Under the European Animal Health Framework, the objective is rapid eradication, not to live with the disease, but to stop it quickly and recover disease-free status. My message is simple. If Europe wants rapid eradication, with less reliance on mass killing, preventions must be operational before the outbreak, not after it. Second slide, please. Before, yes, good, thank you. So, LSD is not zoonotic, it's not a consumer safety crisis, but it would be a mistake to describe it as a minor disease. For cattle, it can mean fever, painful skin lesions, reduced milk production, fertility problems, and sometimes death. For farmers, it means broken movements, disrupted trade, income uncertainty, and fear of losing part of all of the herd. For veterinarians, it means immediate mobilization, surveillance, suspicions, sampling, vaccination, explanations, and reassurance. For society, it creates contingent misinformation and mistrust. So the true cost of LSD is not limited to infected animals. It spreads across the whole systems. Next slide, please. So France detected the first outbreak on the 29 June 2025 in Savoie. The response was rapid, reinforced surveillance, restrict zones, movement controls, disinfections, vaccinations, and depopulation of infected units. The figures are important. 117 outbreaks detected, around 2 million cattle vaccinated, and 3,518 cattle killed. No new French outbreak has been detected since 2 January 2026. From a strictly sanitary point of view, the disease was contained. But the figures do not show the field reality. In Savoie, some culling operation was not only technical operation. They become moments of social rupture with farmers, neighbors, local representatives, veterinarians, and gendarmes facing decisions that nobody wanted to take. From the field is test the whole chain of trust. Next, thank you. The key technical point in sample. With LSD, the challenge is not only the sick animal we can see, it also the animal we cannot safely rule out. Some animals may be incubating the disease or infected without clear clinical signs. This uncertainty becomes a sanitary problem. Rapid eradication requires a high level of certainty, but blood tests alone cannot safely clear a herd. Viremia can be short and low. An animal may be infected or incubating the disease without being detected at the right moment. So the dilemma was this. We can see some sick animals, but we cannot always exclude hidden infection. This is why stamping out was used together with movement restrictions, surveillance, vector control, and vaccination. This does not make culling desirable or routine. It explains why, in this context, it remained as a last resort emergency tool. Next slide, please. The sanitary rationale does not erase the human cost. For farmers, culling can mean losing a herd, a breeding history, or years of work. In Ariège, opposition to culling was not only an individual reaction. It became collective mobilization. Hundreds of people gathered to block the culling of a herd. This showed that sanitary decisions can become social events when they are not understood or accepted. For veterinarians, this crisis created a difficult position. The veterinarian is usually the trust advisor for the farmers. During an outbreak, the same veterinarian may suddenly be seen as part of the control system. Veterinary teams had to detect, explain, vaccinate, reassure, and support difficult measures, sometimes in a climate of anger, fatigue, or mistrust. Some veterinarians were insulted, intimidated, and in some cases received death threats. This is unacceptable. But it also shows that an outbreak does not only test veterinary capacity, it tests public trust. Next slide, please. The French experience does not show that mass culling should be the future of animal disease control. It shows the opposite. Mass culling is what remains when, during an emergency, we do not yet have enough reliable tools to safely identify all infected, incubating, or silently infected animals. So the real question is not, do we like mass culling? Of course, we do not. The real question is, do we have the tools ready before the crisis to make it less necessary? For Europe, I see three priorities. First, prevent error. We risk-based vaccination, active surveillance, biosecurity, movement traceability, and cross-border coordination. Second, equip better with vaccine banks, rapid logistics, and better tools, including DIVA vaccine and DIVA test, so that future decisions can be more targeted. Third, protect trust. By maintaining veterinary capacity, preparing crisis communication before misinformation fills space, and protecting frontline professionals. Prevention is not a theoretical commitment. it has to be operational. Veterinary capacity cannot be improvised during an outbreak. Vaccination logistics cannot be invented in the middle of the crisis. And public trust cannot be rebuilt after it has already collapsed. The French lesson is clear. Emergency control can work, but it comes at a cost. The goal is not to normalize mass culling. The goal is to make rapid eradication less dependent on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we move on to our next speaker. This is Gloria Hillview. She's a veterinarian and specialist in the animal health and pharmacovigilance sector of the National Authority of Veterinary and Plant Protection of Albania. Her work focuses on animal health, disease surveillance, biosecurity, and the management of transboundary animal diseases. She also serves as director for international relations at the Albanian Veterinary Order and represents Albania in several European veterinary organizations. Through her national and international activities, she promotes prevention, preparedness, and the One Health approach to strengthen animal and public health.
Thank you. It's very nice to be in this room and talk about something that we always stress about with everyone else when we do meet together. I think this is a very sensitive topic that should be more stressed and spoken and taken more into considerations. I'm going to speak about our experience with PPR. Compared to France and Greece, we are a very small country. If you see on the map, we are just a bit more than 28,000 square meters as a nation, but we do have a lot of neighbors. And this means that our farms and livestock are dominated by small family backyard farms. Next slide, please. They do have and they do share grazing areas, water supplies, food supplies. Nearly 2/3 of the Albanian sheep and goat farms are kept within the numbers of 1 to 19 head counts. So that means that you can go in one family, find just 2 sheep, mixed flocks. They will have 3 sheep and 1 cow and 1 calf, and so on. The total number is nearly around 2 million, and the majority of them is 1.2 million sheep and more than 500,000, so 625,000 are goats. I'm saying this because it's the focal point of everything else. What does this mean to take care of a disease in a state when you have more than 60% of the flocks with that very little head count? Next slide, please. So we do have PPR last year did have PPR last year for the first time, and we did still yet again this year. Our numbers are not so scary. And when you see that, you will say just, okay, that's manageable. It is. But keep in mind, I said 60%, more than 61% of the population of sheep and goats are small backyard farms. That means for veterinarians, it was a real burden to go from house and check on those. You will just go there, see and see in the other backyard or in the neighbor, the farmers that did try to hide the sick animals, just not to be covered. Next slide, please. So this was our situation, day-to-day situation for quite some time last year. So from the 4th of June to November that we had the movement ban. So that affected internal trade for everything. and also local markets, slaughterhouse, and farmers' trust in veterinarians and each other. And you will find yourself just going to that small backyard farm and trying to explain to that poor farmer that has inherited the farm within generations. So he grew up with sheeps. His father grew up with sheeps, and you have to tell him, you have 20 sheeps and I have to cull them. He will lose it literally because he thinks of them as their family members, not as primary food income, and they are also primary food income. We had to work under extreme conditions, a limited shortage PPE, but we had to deal a lot. We became psychologists of the psychiatric of the farmers. We became their brother, their sister, neighbor. Whenever they needed, we were there, but still they didn't trust us and tried to hide. Next slide, please. So this was our daily work. I tried to keep it a bit light. If you would check my phone, you will see, I think, hundreds of photos like this within the last year and this year. It's shocking, and also seeing videos that you see farmers literally crying because they lost their mainly source of income. They will tell that we are going to bankruptcy. Some of them literally try to kill themselves. So it's not about the animal welfare, but it's everything together. It's the whole community. The animal welfare becomes concerned when the farmer sees clinical signs and tries to hide the animal or tries to kill it himself without any biosecurity measures. So when you will go the next day or the next week to double check that farm, he will just tell, oh, that wasn't never there. So you will have just to double check with ear tags. And another thing that was very difficult to manage this year, we had Eid al-Adha, that is the feast of sacrifice for Muslims. That means that for that specific day, Muslims celebrate this holiday sacrificing sheep. So a lot of them try to go on the black market, illegal movement, try to carry sheep during the night. We doubled everything, every street, national street, village street, but we were so little, and they tried to everything else. We had police force there, army, everything. We were like, I think COVID would have been jealous of the way we tried to approach that day. But still, we had also a lot of positive cases after this feast because they found a way out throughout the mountain and so on. But the impact, as I said, will continue and continue after the outbreaks. Next slide, please. And just a recap of our challenges: early detection, clinical signs, and as I said, farmers that tried to hide the animals, epidemiology and control, seasonal gazing, sharing water supplies, hating each other perhaps. They will be jealous because my farm is positive and why yours is not, so they will just throw a lamb over the fence and call the authorities the next day. Look, I think his lamb has positive his clinical signs. Farmer awareness and compliance, their trust was not zero, but above under zero. And our capacity were limited. And we had a very good regional cooperation. So next slide, please. In the end, my message for how we are still managing PPR, because we still have positive cases, unfortunately. I want to share that behind every culled animal, there is a farmer, a veterinarian, and a community striving to recover, because it takes a team effort, as it took us to be all together trying to manage the situation before the Feast of Sacrifice. So that's all from our little state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll go now to Jane Clark from the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe for the next session.
Thank you, Olga. And I have lost my name, but I am Jane Clark. Is my mic working? Yes. Prynhaddar and diolch. This is in Rob's benefit in Welsh. It is good afternoon and thank you. Just wanting to add another language to the mix. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm also an Edinburgh graduate. I am one of the vice presidents of the Federation of Vets of Europe, and I'm the veterinary director for the Food Standards Agency in the UK that was established as a result of BSE. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments before we start the panel discussion. We have heard that this is a true one health, one welfare, one world challenge that we are facing. It is a societal challenge, and the importance of trust is paramount. People need to be healthy, and they have good well-being and access to safe and affordable food. It's important that animal health and welfare is protected, and that the environment's health and sustainability is protected. And that is underpinned by the data, by the economics, and the true costs. And if we understand those, we can understand the true benefits. As Jonathan says, it pays to be informed. So we are now going into a panel session, and it's really great to have our representative from the Commission from DG Sante. And I will start by introducing Paco, Dr. Francisco Riviera Cojedo. And he's going to do a few introductions, and then I will move on to introductory remarks, and then I will move on to introduce the wider panel. So thank you, and over to you, Paco.
Thank you, Jane. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the host for the food that we enjoyed at the beginning. Otherwise, we would be starving. And we have been setting the political context from a certain political angle. We have heard about the economic context from the academic angle. We see the perception from different angles, but mainly from an emotional angle. And I was asked to set the legal context, and I don't want to be boring, so I will try to skip referring to any piece of legislation. That is my main job. And we are all in an epidemiological context. We are in a situation that is unprecedented. It was impossible to foresee the situation in which we are with PPR, Zika and goat pox, lumpy skin disease, highly pathogenic avian influenza, and African swine fever simultaneously circulating in the territory of the EU. Otherwise, I would never have applied for the position of head of unit for animal health when I did. But some of the drivers of this situation are known, and it's better to be aware of. We're in a situation of climate change. It has epidemiological consequences. A geopolitical change. Some nasty countries are inviting others that are suffering, and this is creating a problem that is affecting also animal health. We can enter into the details later if you wish. And we are watching a societal change in the rural areas. There are no farmers, there are no veterinarians, there is nobody anymore there where the animals should be, that is in the rural areas. And we have heard that we need to minimize culling. Well, the culling is already minimized. I cannot envisage a situation and a scenario in which anybody, any authority, is killing more animals than those that are strictly necessary to achieve the objective of containing the disease. But we need to look forward, and we need to focus on prevention, and the intervention of Julian has been excellent, by the way. And there is wide consensus on moving towards more prevention. And this was already anticipated when the animal health law, is my only legal reference today, was designed after a long debate and a long process. Which are the main elements that we need to consider for prevention? Well, first is priorities. We cannot do everything at the same time. So we need to set few priorities that are affordable and to set a calendar. We are going to control this first and then maybe this later on. If you have two simultaneous outbreaks, you have bovine tuberculosis and foot-and-mouth disease, every veterinarian knows that first foot-and-mouth disease and then we will take care of bovine tuberculosis. And we need to anticipate. We need to enhance the means by means of which we can predict what is going to happen. This is very complicated. We can predict already that there will be a winner of the World Cup, but it's more difficult to see which is the nation of the team that is going to win. Maybe it's not France this time. So this may happen. And we need to be dynamic, flexible and adaptable because the world is changing quickly. It's changing outside, but it's also changing in this house. The balance between the political groups lead into one direction or another. So our rules and our systems need to be adaptable. But more on the field on prevention of animal diseases strictly, which key components we repeat and repeat without thinking deeply what do they mean. Three key elements that are well known might be non-specific, like biosecurity. If you enhance biosecurity, you cope and you help to prevent many diseases. So when you confine animals in a concrete setting with good biosecurity, preventing contact with the outside world, you are helping to contain and to prevent highly pathogenic avian influenza, Newcastle disease, and other poultry diseases. So this confinement of the animals is good for preventing many diseases. In principle, sounds rather efficient. Or you may decide on the basis of your priorities that you need to be specific. The most specific preventive measure is vaccination. Normally, one vaccine shot only prevents for one disease, even for one serotype, and it's even more complicated in case of bluetongue or foot-and-mouth disease. So it's a decision that is difficult to take because you are putting your money on one pathogen, while when you do biosecurity, you are covering a wide range. And you may use the third instrument, that is surveillance, that is both specific and non-specific. If you go towards syndromic surveillance, you are covering a wide range of pathogens. If you go for a survey in which you aim at detecting one pathogen by a laboratory test, then you are specific. So these components set the context, also the legal context, because each and any of these three elements normally should be accompanied by a legal instrument forcing or imposing biosecurity, promoting or imposing vaccination, and applying by way of imposing surveillance. The instrument is the legislation, but the context remains with these three elements. Giving or putting more flesh on the bones, what is meant by surveillance? How do we envisage surveillance? The first thing is we need to have clear objectives. It makes no sense to go to the animals, to the farms, and to try to test for whatever. No, which is the objective of this sampling in case it's laboratory surveillance or this clinical inspection? Are we going for early detection? Are we going to demonstrate that we are free from the disease? Because it's completely different, the approach. So surveillance is not something easy that you go around and you take random samples and then you what? No, it's something to be considered because it costs a lot of money. Second is biosecurity. In biosecurity, in very plain, down-to-earth terms, there are two components only. Eliminating bad habits. Things that are wrong needs not to be done. If you want an example, thinning. And people in the poultry industry, they are doing thinning systematically, knowing that this is extremely dangerous. Or at the same time, we may promote best practices, all in, all out, responsible trade, good isolation of our animals from external sources of pathogens. All these things are somehow important, and should be incorporated within the legal context that supports these actions. For the third element, vaccination. Well, getting a vaccine is easy. It's straightforward. You pay the researchers and they get the vaccine for almost all the pathogens. There are some exceptions. But vaccination is much more complex. You have the vaccine in the cells, but how do you get the animals immunized? This requires a bit of thinking and a lot of money, by the way. But before doing that, there's a decision on whether you vaccinate or not. And this is even more complex. Getting consensus and getting the decision made on whether to embark a country on vaccination is very delicate. That's why the approach that was presented by Julian, in this case by France, but we can use other examples, is one example of best practices, because the decision was made very quickly and the action taken straight away. And finally, this is even more complicated. When you do vaccination, you need to anticipate an exit strategy. Vaccination plan, program, or activity that does not envisage an exit strategy is going to fail. We cannot afford vaccinating all animals everywhere forever for all diseases. So whenever you vaccinate, we need to anticipate these things. Some reflections on the way forward, and I stop talking because I'm expected to set the context. We have been referring to the approach reactive. Nobody likes, apparently. Proactive. Yes, we need to be more proactive. Well, there are some things that need to be reflected. The reactive approach need to be considered. Stamping out when needed should be an automatic action. It's the defense. It's an automatic attitude. You don't need to think a lot. You have foot and mouth disease, you start killing animals. There is no time for reflection, for discussion, for reaching consensus. On the other hand, the proactive approaches like preventive vaccination, better you invest some time getting consensus and getting the strategy down before you start with initiatives that are not well reflected, not well accepted, because there is a long way ahead. And in between, there is a responsive action. So you don't need always to be proactive or reactive. You can be responsive. For that, you need a bit of thinking, not too much, but immediately start acting. And the acts should be in accordance with a frame strategy. And all these things together, when integrated in a piece of legislation, the only problem is they become boring. It becomes hundreds of pages, and it becomes difficult to apply. But without a legal element, everything that I have said, for which most of the colleagues that I know were nodding, smiling, is impossible to implement. So let's get the rules adapted to the actions that need to be taken. Sorry, Jane, if I extended my time, and I hope that you can continue the discussion.
Thank you, Paco. No, perfect timing. Thank you. So we will move on. Paco will be one of our panel members as we look ahead and the way forward. Another of our panel members, and I've got my reading glasses on, will be Rob. He needs no further introduction, but it was really great to hear some early insight into the Irish presidency on day one. Always good to get that very timely. I'm now going to introduce the other panel members in alphabetical order and ask them to do their little prepared presentation. They have 3 or 4 minutes just to do a little bit of a presentation before we move on to questions. So that should have been a hint to Alain that he will be first. So I just would like to introduce Alain Canteloup. He is the General Secretary of FISAS. I will not give the whole of the bio. Please look at your sheets to find out a little bit more about our speakers and panel members. And with that, Alain, over to you.
Thank you, Jean. First, I want to thank the organizers and the MEPs for the invitation. I represent the European Federation of Farmers Animal Health Services. We are owned by farmers, and we are used to work in partnership with veterinarian organization, and of course with competent authorities in the specific field of animal health and animal welfare. On the today's topic, I would like to highlight, fortunately, in Europe, we adopted a lot of time ago now, maybe close of 20 years, a European strategy for animal health. And this strategy is under the principle of prevention is better than cure. And we fully share this principle and we fully support this approach. But maybe, as Paco said, the world is changing and we have maybe to adapt some part of the principle. And of course, Professor Rushton, you highlighted the cost for the society, for the consumer, and so on, about animal disease. But I fully share also the analysis of the impact for each and every farmer in front of the killing, the stamping out process. It's a cost for the enterprise, for the agriculture exploitation, but it's also a cost for the farmer, his family, and its psychological cost. And we have some suicides after this kind of events. So it's not miserable for the future of livestock farming in Europe if we are not able to address this very sad impact. I'd like just to indicate our most important concern in this context. The first concern is about the security of animal movements, health security of animal movements, because we can see generally in all outbreaks some effect linked with animal movement, not strictly managed. So we are going to work with our colleagues, with I see UECBV, with our colleagues about how to improve the security for animal health during animal movement. When I say during, it's from the farm to the farm or to the slaughterhouse. The second priority is the money, because we can't work without money. And we have some difficulties today. We can see in front of the so numerous outbreaks of so many important animal disease, we need more money. And we have to think about how to increase the funding for animal health inside of European Union. Not only public funds, a kind of public-private partnership to be able to bring enough funds to the Commission, to the competent authorities, and to the farming sector to manage animal disease. I will be able to develop later.
Thank you, Alain. And I'm sure there will be questions on your the world is changing fast comment. I think that's really important. So we move on to our next panel member, and I'm really pleased to introduce Siegfried Moder, the FVE president, who will now say a few words on behalf of, well, Germany and the FVE, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. And just let me raise a question. What can we do to make livestock farming more robust and future-proof? We should invest in rural areas and their people, work towards thriving rural areas with universities and ministries to tailor curricula, create incentives and improve working conditions, ensure a strong veterinary network. We have a lack of or a shortage of veterinarians, especially in the rural area. Fully implement Article 25 on the national level. Not an aspiration, establish minimum standards, compensation, frameworks, and enforcement in your country. For me, the most important thing, this animal health visits on the farms. Embed biosecurity as a national priority. Integrate biosecurity advice into animal health visit structures as a standing requirement, not as a crisis measure. Shift investment to prevention. Redirect funding from crisis response towards veterinary prevention systems and cross-link funding, where every euro saves many more downstream. Use the data of the farm to improve animal health and improve the economic situation on the farm. Prevention is better than cure. Prevention is cheaper than controlling outbreaks. Vaccination is better than mass culling. The time to act is now. And we are veterinarians, we should care about the animals and not prefer the culling. We can cull if it's necessary, but we have much more instruments to avoid it. What can we do to reduce mass culling? Implement preventive vaccination, as we heard today. Start with HPAI, EFSA opinion in 2024. Vaccines available, already proven to work in France. Thank you, Julia. And many trials ongoing. Netherlands will start with lawyers. Other countries to follow. We should care about the animals. This should be our main option. Increase flexibility to respond to disease outbreaks, inclusive selective culling. Selective culling. Different epidemiological situations need different approaches. Not every country can use the same measures. Allow for flexibility with scientific grounding, subcategorization in AHL. Embrace vaccination. To live strategy, work disease per disease, involve EFSA, highest priority, hanging fruits first. Scale vaccination to the EU at risk regions and susceptible animals. Invest in new vaccines, diagnostic tools and technology. New vaccines, diagnostic tools and technology will only be developed if we will foreseeable use it. Make sure the EU is on the forefront. Be guided by science, supported by politics, not only by trade arguments. We talk about later on. Develop vaccination and surveillance standards per disease. Mandate EFSA to form opinion per disease on flexible vaccination and surveillance standards. Now, give an example, because for me it's a very, very important point. Many years ago, we have been vaccinating against foot and mouth disease each year. Nobody cared about. It was normal. And the situation was that these animals could be slaughtered normal. Then we have eradicated foot and mouth disease and we stopped, and it was forbidden to vaccinate. Now we had an outbreak last year in January in Germany, Berlin. So far, nobody knows where it came. And then we had outbreak in Hungary and in Slovakia. And what we are doing, even in Germany, I think we did a good job. Hungary and Slovakia also. You have the inner circle. Sick animals have to be vaccinated to stop the infection. but then they are culled. Then we have a next circle, 3 kilometers, the same. But then we have the surrounding area. These animals are healthy, they are vaccinated, and are still healthy. But we can't use them in the slaughterhouse. We cull them also because they are vaccinated. Millions of people don't have anything to eat. We just cull these animals. I can't understand this, and it's not because the legislation wants this. It's because the trade doesn't want you to use this meat. Thank you for listening.
Many thanks, Siegfried. I think we will be talking more about this at the Commission's event on the animal health law 10 years on next week. So my final panel member who I'd like to introduce is she is an Irish veterinarian and an EBVS specialist in animal welfare science and ethics and law. Over to you, Valerie. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Jane. And my thanks to the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, to Animal Advocacy and Food Transition, and to the MEPs for the invitation and beautiful plant-based lunch. It's a great honour to speak on this subject today, a matter I care greatly about. And as a citizen of Ireland, it's auspicious to be here on the first day of the Irish presidency. The animals can't come here to take part in this stakeholder meeting, yet they are without doubt very important stakeholders. I will represent them. So I am here for the individual because that is what animal welfare refers to. From the Bramble Committee in the 60s to Meller's 5 domains, on which the World Organization for Animal Health bases their welfare framework, animal welfare has always been about the state of the individual animal, their physical and mental state, how they cope, what they feel, how they experience life and death. The unit of welfare is the individual animal, not the flock, not the herd. This is a crucial point if we seriously want to count the true cost of animal disease. In the 2021 to 2022 avian influenza season alone, as we've already heard, around 50 million birds were culled in affected establishments across Europe. We record that as a statistic. But every single one was an individual sentient animal. And by WOA's own definition, the way an animal dies is part of welfare. European law recognises that animals are sentient. That's Article 13 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. And yet, when disease strikes, our law makes killing the first response and treats the alternatives as an exception the authorities may choose, rather than a path they must take. I am asking you to turn that around. The killing of healthy animals should be a genuine last resort, written into our laws, not left to discretion. For avian influenza, the alternative already exists. We can vaccinate, and we can tell an infected bird from a vaccinated one using DIVA vaccines. France has done it. The Netherlands is moving on it. The barrier is not science and innovation. The barrier is trade. And that makes it a political choice, which means it is yours to change. The FVE has formally called for a legal framework that allows vaccination to reduce the need for culling, supports DIVA vaccines, and addresses trade barriers. So let me be concrete. To the European Commission, to DG Sante, bring forward legislation that makes animal welfare a mandatory consideration in disease control, and that makes the killing of healthy animals a true last resort wherever vaccination is feasible. To the European Parliament, recognising your key role as co-legislators, push for it and lead internationally so that choosing to vaccinate no longer costs a country its trade or our farmers their flock or their herd. 50 million individuals. We have the tools to kill far fewer of them. What we need now is the will and the law to use those tools. Gurmi Lamahagif, Harja. Thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you. And I would like to extend that round of applause to all of our panel members. Thank you for your insights. So we have quite a short time, but I'm just going to double check. Have we got a little bit of flex at the end of this meeting?
I personally don't, but you have, because the room afterwards is free. So you are not, it's totally free afterwards. So yeah, okay. So we have a few minutes more, yeah?
And me also, don't forget me.
Oh, you're here. Wonderful to see you. Yes, sorry, reading glasses. This is age for you. So what I will try to do then is, well, I'm going to say my thank yous first that I was going to say at the end, which is a massive thank you to both Tini and Paolo as our co-MEP hosts. We're so grateful for your support. And I hope that you have found this a really interesting series of presentations. Also to all of our speakers and to the attendees, we're going to have some questions, so you'll be able to be involved now. And of course, to our co-coordinator, the Animal Advocacy and Food Transition. So thank you all. And now we'll start with a quick question from the WebEx attendees. I want to be very clear. We have a number of people dialed in, and your contributions and your engagement is just as important as us here in the room. So I have given Paco a little heads up that this question was coming. And it is, do you think that the WOA guidelines need to be updated to encourage countries not to default to mass culling in the first instance? How does the EU engage with WOA? And we come back to those trade questions. The WOA code is basically what we are trading on. So Paco, I'm afraid that one is over to you.
It's a pity that WOHA colleagues are not here today. My understanding of the way the international standards are conceived are on both flanks, promote the best possible health status worldwide, and at the same time ensuring safe trade and sustainability of farming. And I don't find references in those standards to culling or killing as from the point of view of the organization. It remains silent on the way diseases have to be dealt with. There is a large portion of the codes that explain how to recover the status if you have done this culling or if you have not done this culling. So culling is an option in this international framework. In the EU, in our environment, we base our actions on legislation that is produced in this house and where the culling is made compulsory whenever it's absolutely necessary. I cannot think that the member states or the members of the parliament are all completely wrong and are completely mad imposing culling, having a different option. So it's not a matter of the veterinarians, it's the society represented democratically in this house who decides for this disease, in this setting, under these circumstances, you first cull and then you think. Diverging from this, it will require a complete different approach that would need to be, of course, sustained by the way we make decisions in the EU, according to the treaty. Thank you.
Thank you, Paco. Would any of the other panel members wish to comment on this? No. Thank you. And we
Spiros. Hello. Memory from the past. First of all, I would like to thank Mrs. Tilly for your invitation. And thanks a lot of my good friend Olga. I support you, not on the animal welfare only, but on the animal health and on animal welfare, of course, because very important to my country and for you and all of them, because most of them we are veterinarians. I would like to intervene because I'm a little bit old in this room. I have many good friends from the past. I met some of you from the past. I would like to be a little bit clear because in my country, and I hope in the other countries, have some difficulties for the vaccination because you have the norms of the OI, the ex-OI, VOHA, because it must be obligatory if we accept this norm, because if we start vaccination, first of all, we don't have approved vaccines. It's not approved, it's fine, fully approved. Second, if we would like to do the vaccination, we must know what exactly happened with third countries, because some of them stop our exports. Everybody is very afraid about the exports. You know, exports means money. It's not scientific, it's money. And nobody would like to vaccine without knowing how we manage our export, European exports, not Greek export, European export. Second, we must know exactly the game, the rules and the whole game of this. And third, we must know who pays for this. And also, we are veterinarians and must know how is our statute and how we manage all the disease with the persons we have, the persons we have in our countries, in our offices, because you have lack of staff and you don't have enough veterinarians. This is 3 points we must manage as veterinarians, European veterinarians. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wonder whether we could just take the final point on veterinarians. And Siegfried, would you like to comment on that? Sorry, I put my president on the spot there.
No problem. As I said before, for me, vaccinating is a very important instrument. And I really don't want to accept that healthy animals are vaccinated. They are still healthy. We throw them just away. It's for me ethical, not acceptable. On the other side, we should have good vaccines, the right vaccines. We should have enough vaccines. For example, FMD is just one company producing this vaccine. And these are points we have to clarify. No question. But just by being vaccinated, not able to use this meat, sorry, healthy is healthy. I won't agree with this.
Thank you, Siegfried. I think, we all recognize that vaccines are used widely in healthy animals for our food chain. Obviously, the challenge becomes the listed diseases and the requirements for trade. And we have talked about the economics of that, including trade means money, and it also means carcass balance. It means sustainable use of an animal. Now, I feel as though Jonathan could have been on the panel for this. I didn't know whether, Jonathan, you had any further comments around how we do that?
I just want to make a plea that when we say vaccinate or cull, like it's a simple process, it's not. It requires so much in terms of logistics. So the assumption you're going to vaccinate means you've got the right vaccine, so you know what pathogen's circulating, and that you've got enough vaccine. And if you're talking about vaccinating 50,000 birds in a shed and no handling facilities, then that's not a straightforward task. So I go back to what Paco said, that the very process requires us to be quite careful about what we recommend and what kind of resources we require. And if you're putting vets into that situation and farmers, where that team will not be able to go and vaccinate the next door farm, you'll have to have another team because of the fact there might be virus circulation or pathogen circulation. So these things require consideration about the implications of resources and whether we're capable of delivering them at speed. It requires epidemiology knowledge to sort of think that through carefully, and whether we've got the right resources to actually achieve what we're trying to do. And while I appreciate, I don't like mass culling. It's the most complicated thing that anybody can try and achieve. And I've seen it in different parts of the world where we focus on getting rid of the animal and we forget about getting rid of the pathogen. So often do we see the removal of the animal, but not disinfection and not decontamination of properties. So we don't stop the circulation of pathogens. So again, those things need to be carefully thought through. But I'd also ask the audience to think carefully. If we don't remove pathogen quickly and we allow it to establish in a wider population, is that what we want? Do we go back to a situation where we manage some of these pathogens across big tracts of populations? And the implications of that, we need to have counterfactuals when we do our analysis to make sure that we're actually looking at reality rather than thinking about what we really want. But I still think, let's go back to the utopia. Every animal that we raise has to have as many good days as possible. It's always going to have one bad day, but we need to make sure that those animals we raise have a good life. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. I realise there's only 5 minutes left of our formal agenda. So I wonder if I could just pause and ask our MEP sponsors if they would like to say a few words, just to make sure that we hear from you before we then carry on perhaps with a few additional questions. So please, across to who would like to go first?
I just want to say thank you again that you came so numerous and also for the interesting presentation. And I made already my main points in my introduction, so I immediately hand over to Paulo do Nascimento Cabral to make the conclusion of the event as co-host. Thank you for being there and thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to all. And thank you, Tilly, for co-hosting this event, this important event indeed. This is an issue that gathers not by ideology, but by the importance of the theme. This is why EPP is here. And it's not usual to see EPP with Greens together in so many issues. So it's quite good for us to organize this event and to show that vaccination, the animal welfare is also things that we as EPP recognize and we defend. I would also like to thank all speakers and participants for contributing for this timely conference on one of the most pressing challenges faced by European livestock producers, the economic burden of animal diseases. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe and Animal Advocacy and Food Transition for co-organizing this event. Before addressing the issues of animal health, I would like to share the following figures with you. The livestock sector, and we are waiting for the strategy of livestock in the next 7th of July from the Commission, accounts for around 40% of the EU's agricultural added value and generates an annual turnover of approximately 400 billion euros. However, in 2025, compared with 2015, these latest figures were published yesterday by Eurostat. Pig numbers were 8.9% lower, cattle numbers were 9.7% lower, sheep numbers were 12.2% lower, and goat numbers were 17.5% lower. This is a result of several factors, including excessive bureaucratic burdens, an increasing number of regulatory requirements, market volatility, and animal diseases. For this reason, animal health is not merely a veterinary concern. It is a core element of our food security. Every outbreak reminds us that diseases affecting livestock rapidly extend beyond the farm gate, disrupting markets, threatening rural livelihoods, and undermining consumers' confidence. The economic consequences can be substantial. According to the State of Animal Health in the World's 2025 report, published by the World Organization for Animal Health, annual losses caused, for example, by foot and mouth disease are estimated between $6.5 billion or $21 billion in endemic regions, while outbreaks in previously disease-free areas generate losses exceeding $1.5 billion. These figures clearly demonstrate that investing in prevention is significantly more cost-effective than managing the consequences of disease outbreaks. In 2007, the European Commission came with the motto, "Prevention is better than cure," as part of its animal health strategy. Let me also add vaccination. Prevention and vaccination should be, therefore, the cornerstone of European animal health policy. This also includes addressing one of the greatest global threats of our time, antimicrobial resistance. That is no longer a future concern. It's already compromising human and animal health, food production, and economic stability worldwide. Current projections indicate that by 2050, antimicrobial resistance could threaten the food security of 2 billion people and generate cumulative economic losses approaching $100 trillion unless decisive action is taken. Reducing disease incidence through effective prevention, vaccination, and biosecurity is therefore one of the most effective strategies, in our view, for reducing antimicrobial use. Disease outbreaks have also immediate and severe implications for international trade. They devastate animal populations while triggering sanitary restrictions and import bans that disrupt global supply chains. Exporting countries lose access to strategic markets, producers experience severe financial losses, and importing countries are forced to secure alternative supplies at considerably higher costs. Alongside vaccination, effective biosecurity remains one of the most efficient and cost-effective preventive measures available, but they are not enough. This naturally leads to a broader concept that I strongly support, the One Health approach. One health, animal health, human health, and environmental health are intrinsically interconnected. Consequently, animal health should no longer be treated as an isolated sectoral issue, but rather as a central component of an integrated European health strategy. For this reason, I continue to question, and directly to the Commissioner, the absence of animal health from the European Board of Agriculture and Food. Meanwhile, the EU continues to face the expansion of several high-impact transboundary diseases, including African swine fever, blue tongue, and lumpy skin disease. And we just had this delegated act from the Commission regarding the movement of blue tongue affected animals. Experience has consistently shown that sanitary measures alone are often insufficient. Restricting animal movements is extremely difficult in today's interconnected agricultural systems. A more effective strategy combines vaccination with robust surveillance, movement controls, biosecurity, and rapid response mechanisms. High-quality vaccines remain indispensable for both disease control and long-term eradication. However, vaccination strategies continue to face significant challenges. Vaccine development requires substantial investment in research, manufacturing, and distribution, making affordability a persistent obstacle in many regions. Strengthening prevention also requires reinforcing our veterinary services at both national and regional levels. Early detection, rapid intervention, and coordinated surveillance are crucial to limiting disease spread. The wider implementation of the DIVA principle, differentiating infected from vaccinated animals, is crucial for maintaining confidence in international trade. And this is a huge issue that we have right now. When we see some export destination, even inside the EU, that they have some concerns and some restrictions to import animals that were vaccinated. So we need to raise awareness about what is the process of vaccination and to guarantee that this is a principle that is harmonized through the European Union and accepted by third countries. Reliable differentiation between infected and vaccinated animals helps to prevent unnecessary restrictions on the movement of livestock and animal products while safeguarding market access. Another issue that deserves serious consideration is the progressive withdrawal of vital active substances available for animal health. Similar to what has occurred in the plant protection sector, livestock producers are facing a steadily shrinking toolbox to manage diseases effectively. In Portugal alone, for example, the planned withdrawal of 44 active substances by 2030 is estimated to generate an economic impact of approximately 510 million euros. We must therefore carefully assess the long-term implications of these regulatory decisions to guarantee that farmers are not left without effective and scientifically validated solutions for protecting animal health and welfare. And for instance, for aquaculture, it's even more complicated. You only have one substance authorized for the aquaculture producers. When we are talking nowadays of strategic autonomy, food sovereignty, food security, everything must to be taken into account. This is precisely why I have proposed several amendments within the Horizon Europe regulation calling for dedicated funding for animal health and production of vaccines. European research programs should promote investments, of course, in animal health measures, including prevention, surveillance, vaccination, and disease containment, reinforcing this way the resilience of our livestock sector. I would like also to end with this message. The cost of preventing disease will always be significantly lower than the cost of managing epidemics. Investing in veterinary services, and I heard the 3 requests from our previous speaker here in the room. You said they're more experienced one, but I see a lot of youth over there, so don't worry. So the cost investing in veterinary services, scientific research, biosecurity, vaccination, and training is a strategic investment in EU food security, competitiveness, and resilience. And it is important for our group to highlight this. Food security, competitiveness, and resilience. And this is a tool and instrument that we need to take very carefully on board. Animal health is everyone's health. By strengthening prevention today, we protect our farmers, our consumers, our environment, and the future generations. Thank you so much for your presence here. And it was a huge honor and a pleasure to co-host this important event with my team that's also here during the full event. And I'll be completely available for anything that you find it's important to continue to elaborate or change or influence the policies that we're making here in order to guarantee that animal health, animal welfare will be one of the instruments and the tools that we need to guarantee better effectiveness of the use of resources that are limited, but also food security, strategic autonomy, and competitiveness for the sector. Thank you so much for your attention.
And many thanks. In a slight change to the program, I will ask just one more question of the panel. But before I do that, I do want to thank you again for the political will that we are seeing around the room. We need to make that strategic investment, and we will not get that without political will. That's where the lever is. So thank you so much for you and your team, and for Tilly and Tilly's team for supporting us in this event. We've had one question from WebEx. We've had one question from the room. I can only apologize that there are not more questions. We could talk, I think, for another hour, but I'm going to ask each panel member, and I will come to you in alphabetical order, just to give you a heads up, a simple question as we finish. And I hope it will give us some real food for thought as we look ahead on the way forward. If you could prioritize just one action at an EU level to better prevent infectious animal diseases over the next 5 years, what would that be? And then just very quickly, why would that be? Alain.
Well, thank you, Jen. If we have to promote one action, I will embrace all the actions. I will say we will have to promote an holistic approach at farm level about animal health. We spoke about biosecurity, we spoke about vaccination, but we have other factors which are important. I will speak about feed, about environment, livestock housing. These factors are also important. So we need to develop this kind of holistic approach to better secure animal health at farm. It means a partnership between farmer and his vet, partnership with other of animal health, like my members, but not only. We need also a collective approach, because if we act inside of only one farm, it will not be enough, because we depend also of the behavior of other farmers. So we need to build a collective approach for an holistic treatment of animal health in each and every farm. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alain. Partnership and an holistic approach, that's brilliant. Our next panel member is Paco, alphabetically.
If I would need to prioritize one action, and before going in this direction, there is something with the calendar that has a meaning, and it has been set today in different steps. On the 8th of July, next week, we are having a big conference to which everyone is invited. Please don't hesitate on registering. It's free attendance. To discuss what has happened in the last year with the animal health law, but not only the law, not the legalistic aspects of each piece of legislation. To have a deep evaluation on where we are and where do we want to move. And this happens the day after the Commission is expected to adopt the livestock strategy. And the livestock strategy will be adopted the day after the Commission will adopt the report on the evaluation of the animal health law. So this sequence of events, for me, have a meaning. First, animal health, then livestock, and after we discuss. So without animal health, there is no livestock, and without livestock, there is no discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Partnership again, I think. Thank you so much. Rob.
Yeah, I would actually agree fully with Alain and Paco, and thinking to the future, you cannot talk about animal health without talking about veterinarians, and particularly veterinarians who are willing to work with large animals in rural areas. And we know that there is a long time lag of educating veterinarians and getting them up. And already in Ireland, and certainly we see around Europe and really around the developed world, that large animal veterinary is a less attractive role. We're struggling to keep people in it. And so for me, for the next 5 or 10 years, I think it's an area we need to focus on. How do we increase the supply of veterinarians who are willing to live in rural areas, work in rural practices, and to deliver this on the ground? And without them, if we have large rural areas without active veterinarians, then we miss surveillance, we miss the early detection, we miss that partnership and trust with the farmers. So I think for us in Ireland, it's something we have done quite a lot of work on, and we've some very interesting studies on it. If anybody wants access to them, feel free to contact me. But it's certainly an area, I think, again, on that bigger picture piece that we need to prioritise. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And to that, I would add official veterinarians as well. They are also in short supply. So thank you. That may hand on very nicely to Siegfried.
Thank you. Yes, again, I repeat, for me, the animal health law visits is one of the main topics we should use and even put it on the national level, because there's so many things behind. And we have more data. We can work in a different way, and the work, for example, in dairy cattle for the future will be quite different than it was in the past. And we should use this new data. And another point was not mentioned today, but I want to show you, it was a big WOA Congress in autumn in Geneva last year. Biological threats. Many of you have been there. And I think we should care about this. It's a very important topic, and to really work on this topic and be successful, we need the veterinarians, and we need the livestock, dairy cattle, for example. This we should keep in mind and even bring up the awareness. This would be my last word for today. Preparedness, we need the veterinarians.
Thank you, Siegfried. I will forgive you for saying more than one thing because I think they were both important. And now finally, and the last words, I think very appropriately to Valerie, perhaps speaking on behalf of the animals.
So I think if we want to really help the animals, I'd like to echo what Alan has been mentioning. We really need a more holistic approach. So we also really need to look at rethink the spatial organization of animal farming within the EU. So the number of farms, their size, the stocking densities of the animals within them, and the relation of the farms where they sit in relation to each other, and not having them clustered together. For example, with avian influenza, that might really help if we could try and look at the actual spatial organization of farming. So aside from vaccination, I think we need to look upstream and try and deal with those factors as well.
Wonderful. A big thank you to the panel. I think we have heard about partnership. I think we have heard about a holistic approach, and I think we have heard about evidence. And if we put those three things together, along with the goodwill and the power in this room, I do think that we can achieve really great things. So on that note, and it feels a little strange for me to be closing the meeting, I will close the meeting and say a huge, huge thank you to you all. And hopefully those of you have been able to stay online, and this will all be recorded and available for the future as well, as a real opportunity for us to work together. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.